My name is Hannah Sheehan. I am a MESA fellow from New York State. I'm splitting my time between the Haudenosaunee and Lenape territories in upstate and downstate New York. I used to live and work in New York City, and I do a little bit of that now, but I'm also working remotely from family farmland upstate. I'm an aspiring farmer. I grew up in an agricultural community in the Schoharie Valley, which was known as the breadbasket of the American Revolution. I grew up working at a local farm stand. I'm passionately concerned about food sovereignty and conservation, biodiversity. I'm hoping to spend the next couple of years traveling and working on farms and learning as much as I can about specifically community gardening and agroforestry. I am an alumni of the Training in Applied Agroecology program, cohort 5, part of MESA, the Multinational Exchange for Sustainable Agriculture. And this is my presentation on agricultural matrix. So in ecology, a matrix is an environment or material in which something develops. It can be the surrounding medium or structure of an organism, where a plant is growing or an animal is developing. It's also the portion of the landscape in which wildlife habitat patches and corridors are embedded. My favorite definition I found of an ecological matrix comes from a book by Richard T.T. Foreman called Land Mosaics, The Ecology of Landscapes and Regions. He described a matrix as the background ecological system. And here we have, as an example, the Amazon rainforest, which is the largest biodiverse tropical rainforest on the planet and an environmental matrix for so many different species of plants. An agricultural matrix, and here we have Neo from the Matrix dressed up in kind of his peasant finery. An agricultural matrix links conservation, agriculture, and food sovereignty. It is the opposite of industrial scale monocropping agricultural sacrifice zones where you're clear cutting forest or rainforest to grow crops or graze livestock. It's also, interestingly, an alternative to protected natural areas where you would have a national park where no agriculture is permitted. It encourages multifunctionality and biodiversity because you are creating agricultural possibilities within an existing environment. It emphasizes complementary relationships and integrated systems, which really mirrors how nature works. It's working within those natural systems. And agricultural matrices also allow for the migration and reproduction of native species, because again, you're working within that pre-existing context. Forest farming is one of my favorite examples of an agricultural technique that makes use of an ecological matrix. This is a graphic from the USDA National Agroforestry Center that explains that forest farming makes use of the vertical and horizontal capacities of the woods to grow produce, sometimes high value produce, under the canopy. And they grow and thrive in relationship with each other because you are planting different species that work together in a complementary way. Silvopasture, where you introduce livestock into a system like this, is another great example of making use of an agricultural matrix in a way that positively benefits the whole environment and the people who live there. Sustainable and resilient agroecosystems, like forest farming, take into account and operate within agricultural matrices. They involve awareness and respect for local culture and natural processes. They integrate ecology, economics, and society because, again, you're able to produce sometimes very large scale crops. You're able to produce a large scale crops that feed people and produce economic livelihoods for those who live nearby. You're not kind of taking land from one area and reserving it as a recreational space or a natural area that is forever wild that no one can touch. It's about integrating all of these different possibilities together for the benefit of everybody and everything that shares this planet. Sustainable and resilient agroecosystems are not strictly concerned with reducing the amount of land used for agriculture because they're strategically woven within an environment. This image was taken in Brazil, and it shows what happens when farmers cut down trees to graze livestock and grow crops in the traditional way. So you have the wild rainforest and the barren land, and it's a very stark example of the opposite of what we're talking about in this presentation. This is not integrated, this is sectioned off. This is not an example of agriculture that takes into account the ecological matrices that exist in this region. Here we have a cacao tree that needs so much water, and it's something that thrives under the shade of larger trees that allow it to soak up more water and not dry out. This is a traditional way of cultivating cacao among indigenous people throughout the world in regions where cacao grows. And I hope that as more of us learn about these concepts and keep agricultural matrices at the forefront of our minds when we're planning our agricultural systems, we'll start to have farmland that looks like this, as opposed to the clear cutting that we saw in the previous slide. Please get in touch if you want to talk agriculture, agricultural matrices, biodiversity conservation, community gardening, agroforestry. Drop me a line. Thank you.